When we returned home after a week-long honeymoon, we heard noises coming from inside the house.
I got scared, thinking maybe we'd been burglarized while we were away, and said to my husband, "Did you hear that? I think there might be someone inside. Should we call the cops?"
However, my husband seemed unperturbed and responded, "It's fine," as he walked into the house.
I hurriedly followed him in, only to find my meal and SIL. Though relieved it wasn't a burglar, I couldn't understand why the two of them were there. It turned out that my Mile and SIL had decided to look after the house while we were away, and my husband had given them a key. I assumed they'd leave once we returned, but they showed no signs of leaving.
I hinted, "It's getting dark. Uchins, maybe it's time to head out?"
But they said, "Can't we at least take it easy today?" At 6 and not only did they not return home, but they took over the living room and started to take a bath without permission.
I thought they would leave the next day, but they showed no intention of leaving even the next morning. And when I returned from work, they were still there.
Out of frustration, I told my husband I wanted him to ask him to leave. But what he said took me by surprise. We're all living here now. If you don't like it, leave.
It wasn't his mother or sister he was telling to leave. It was me.
I simply replied, "All right," packed some essentials into a suitcase and left.
My name is Helen. I'm 29 years old and work as a magazine editor. Here's 3 years ago, through a friend's introduction. I met Steven, who later became my husband. Having limited dating experience, I was drawn to Steven, who was decisive and took the lead, unlike me who hesitated a lot. Steven confessed his feelings to me, and after 3 years of dating, he proposed and we got married. Whether it was deciding on our new home or wedding venue, Steven always took charge, making the process smooth and reassuring. The life with him in our new home was wonderful, but his Mile and Seltava were proving to be a challenge. My husband's father passed away about 10 years ago, leaving just his mother and his 27-year-old sister. I was initially worried about getting along with them, but had minimal interaction before our marriage. However, after we got married, they started to interfere a lot more.
My mother-in-law calls me almost every day and says, "Can you send me more money, just a little? I can't live a decent life on this amount of money. Just $200 more is enough." She asks me to increase the amount of money I send her. My husband is the one who sends the money, so I tell my mother-in-law to ask my husband for more money, but she says, "You say we can't increase it anyway because you're so lavish. You will be punished if you don't take good care of your husband's parents." She refuses to listen to me and says that it is my fault that the remittances are not increasing.
She also lectures me about how I should go to my in-laws' house more often to clean up, and that as a wife it is polite to send some of their favorite foods every month. Well, I'd receive these phone calls for my meal. My SIL would drop by unannounced.
She'd often arrive during dinner prep and say, "I was in the neighborhood and dropped by. Isn't dinner ready yet? I'm starving. Make it quick."
Then she'd relax on the sofa, have dinner, and leave.
I told her I preferred if she called before visiting, and not to visit so often. But she dismissed my concern, saying it's just a casual visit.
I didn't push back hard because, they're my husband's family. Moreover, my husband did ask them to stop when it mentioned being uncomfortable.
In the midst of all this, about 6 months after our wedding, we finally got to go on our overdue honeymoon to Europe. We had a great time de-stressing and thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. However, when we returned home after the 1-week trip, we heard noises from inside.
Thinking there might have been a break-in. I told my husband, "Did you hear that noise? Maybe someone's inside. Should we call the police?"
Yeah, my husband just replied, it's fine, and entered the house.
Owing him in. I found my melon SIL, still in shock. I listened to their chatter.
Oh, you're back.
Welcome back, give me something quick. I said you get me that bracelet. Bam. And I just asked for.
To really think they'd buy such an expensive thing.
Why are you here?
So you're saying we're a nuisance? It's dangerous to leave a house empty during a trip. We've done you a favor by staying here. You should be grateful.
It seems my Mile and SIL said they'd watch over the house while we were gone, and apparently they got the key from my husband. When I told my husband that I wish he'd discussed it with me first, he said they had suddenly offered to do so just before our trip, leaving him no time for discussion. I decided not to push the matter further and thought that thanks to them, at least no burglars broke in. However, upon checking the house, every room was in chaos. My SIL's clothes hung in abundance in the closet, with the ones she hadn't worn piled up like a mountain on the floor. The living room was messy, not just on the tables, but with clothes, bags, remote controls, and comics scattered everywhere. Dusted from the trip. I was disheartened by the idea of cleaning this mess. But that wasn't the main issue. Oh, we had returned. My Melon SIL showed no sign of leaving.
I gently mentioned, "It'll get dark soon. You should probably head out."
They said, "Can't we at least take it easy today?" And not only did they not return home, but they took over the living room and started to take a bath without permission.
I hoped they'd leave by the next morning, but there was no sign of that. Even when I returned from work, they were still there.
Even when I bluntly told them I wanted them to leave, my Mel and SIL said, "We're family, you shouldn't mind us." Let's just pretend we're not here.
Even though they said pretend we're not here, I still had to prepare dinners, clean and do laundry, which kept me on edge. They'd never leave, so I decided that once my husband returned, I'd ask him to intervene. As I was tidying up the rooms, I noticed one of my collectible perfumes was missing. It was a limited edition fragrance that cost more than $300, and I used it sparingly. In a panic, I asked my Mile, who seemed oblivious. But when I confronted my SIL, she said, "Oh, that... I haven't." However, most of the perfume was gone. Just over 60 of it had remained the last time I checked. "It smells nice," she remarked. My friends liked it too, so I lent it to them. She said this without a hint of remorse, pushing me over the edge. "Why would you use it without asking? At stealing, aren't you taught not to take others' belongings?" If you just borrowed it, will you return it? It's not about the money. I want the same item back. It's just one perfume. You're being so petty. I know that brand. It can't be that expensive. She then looked up the price on her smartphone and exclaimed, "Wait, why is it so expensive? Spending $300 on perfume is crazy. If it's so precious, you should have locked it up." She seemed genuinely shocked by the price and began to get defensive. I only used it because it was there in the house. Actions to be quickly stunts to issues. I never thought I knew related to a thief who'd just barge into my home and use my stuff without asking. Just because I used a bit of perfume doesn't make me a thief. While SIL and I were arguing, my husband came home. What's all the commotion? I pulled my husband aside into the bedroom and explained everything. Ultry, I told him I couldn't stand it any longer and wanted his mother and sister to leave. He responded, "Why are you overreacting? Oh, and by the way, Mel and So will be living with us from now on." I was left speechless. He continued, "Our family house was getting old and needed major repairs. Living here would save money since there are spare rooms. Why didn't you discuss this with me? Isn't this house ours? I'm paying the mortgage too." They had already decided to sell the family house. "So it's settled? We all live here now. If you're unhappy, you can leave." Hearing these words, my feelings towards my husband instantly cooled. I understand. I started packing a few essentials into a suitcase. My husband didn't try to stop me, only remarking, "Running away after a fight is childish," before he went back to the living room. My Mile and Sil smirked as they watched me pack. As soon as I stepped out the front door, they quickly locked it behind me. I never planned to return to that house, so I wasn't particularly bothered. I checked into a hotel and contacted my boss, whom I often consulted with, and got a few days off. During that break, I searched for a new place and informed my parents that I was kicked out after my Mile and Sil moved in with my husband. But when asked about my future plans, I said I intended to divorce.
Meanwhile, I received just one email from my husband which read, "You can come back when you've reflected." Both moms has said they'd forgive you. When I called him to say I wanted a divorce, his initial reaction was, "Are you seriously considering divorce over this?" He also mentioned he just needed to be patient. But he eventually agreed to the divorce when he realized I was determined, but
Things moved quickly from there, and we were divorced within days. I wanted to settle everything quickly, so I decided not to claim any shared assets and left the house to him. Although we were married for less than a year, friends and acquaintances became concerned, wondering what had happened. If it had been me before, I would have said, "It's nothing," and not talked about it, but I was so blown away that I told everyone around me what had happened. But to which everyone responded, "That's just unbelievable." Their sympathy was a comfort, and I felt better for having shared my story. Since I started living alone and no longer had to spend time on housework, I worked harder than ever before. I tripled my usual output and even helped those struggling to keep up. My boss expressed concern, but being immersed in work was a blessing. It kept me from recalling the painful memories and doubting my own decisions. It was around 5 months post-divorce. My ex-husband called. I think he was calling about belongings I had left behind. I answered.
At first, he inquired about what I was up to. He also asked if I was living alone, avoiding the main topic. I thought it was unusual because my ex-husband is a person who gets, cranky if I don't get right to the point, but I didn't want to waste time. So I asked him why he was calling me, and he said, I want to get back together.
Having no intention of reconciling, I tried to end the call, but he quickly interjected.
Hey, you're about to, there's something else I haven't told you.
What? I'm busy. Make it quick.
Oh, Bumar, can you lend me some money?
Considering we both contributed to the mortgage, it shouldn't have been that challenging for him alone, given his income. From our conversation, it turned out he expected a raise a few months prior but didn't get one. He was also informed that future raises would be unlikely. So, he decided to quit and find a new job, thinking he'd easily secure a position with better pay. But he couldn't find one paying more than his previous job.
I told him I couldn't lend him any money, and I asked him how to contact me again. And he retorted, you're still single, right? No one's gonna want an older, divorced woman. I'll be better off reconciling with me.
I simply replied, I'm good, and hung up. I couldn't believe I once loved and married such a man. Since then, not only my ex but also my male and SIL kept reaching out. But from their calls, peoples, I gathered that they had assumed my ex made a hefty salary since we had bought a new house and had a lavish wedding. They were under the impression that I was preventing him from sending them more money. As with me gone, they expected a comfortable lifestyle. However, they soon realized my ex's income was less than anticipated and couldn't sustain the lifestyle they'd envisioned. They probably believed men generally earn more than women, but in our case, I made more than my ex. Well, I wanted to block their calls. Until I feared they'd call or even show up at my workplace since they knew where I worked. So, I answered one in every few calls. The calls were always about their financial troubles, excessive spending by the mile and SIL, no savings left, and although they started part-time jobs, they spent what they earned, making it futile for household expenses. It's thinking they'd stop if I told them I was broke too. I decided to give it a shot.
That day, as always, he came to me saying, I'm almost out of cash and the bills are due. And you've laver. Derek, can you lend me some money?
So I responded, actually, I've decided to leave my current job. I've nearly used up all my savings. I'm the one who needs a loan now. If you think I'm lying, you can check with my coworkers.
Upon hearing this, my ex-husband said, oh, I see. And hung up. Just as I hoped, he didn't call me anymore.
When I told a friend about this, she informed me that my ex-husband's situation was worse than I thought. What turns out, the place he switched jobs to pays less than his previous job, and most of his salary is being taken up by his house mortgage. Not only that, SIL had an affair with the manager of the store where she worked part-time, and apparently the manager's wife found out about it and demanded alimony. Initially, the sister-in-law claimed he approached me first. I didn't know he was married. That was revealed through messages that she had known the boss's wife was pregnant, yet she still pursued him. The boss and his wife ended up divorcing, but the sister-in-law faced hefty compensation demands, and when her friends found out, she lost both her job and them. My ex-husband's family is swamped with the mortgage and the compensation debts, leading them to borrow more just to pay off existing debts. My ex-husband complains to his friends that Mil complains that her son and daughter are single and have no money while everyone she knows around her has grandchildren, and that they fight every day.
Furthermore, that friend said Steven laments that he can't find a partner after becoming single, but he looks so worn out and much older than his 30s. A guy like that won't attract anyone.
Many people know why I divorced him because I've talked about it. Now, he has only this one friend left, having no one else to talk to. He spills everything to him. This friend was the one who introduced me to my ex-husband.
He says he feels responsible for introducing us, and also finds Steven's stories somewhat entertaining. So he keeps in touch and makes sure my ex-husband doesn't come around bothering me.
As for me, I recently co-founded a web magazine company with a friend from my college days. The reason I left my job and used up most of my savings was to start this company. It's a small firm, so I have to manage a lot on my own. It's challenging, but I'm happy to take on new tasks. Previously, I wasn't proactive in facing challenges, but past experiences have made me more resilient. On top of that, I've started seeing someone I met through work. He was the one who pulled me along while respecting my feelings, and thanks to meeting him, I learned that my ex-husband was not a leading man, just selfish. After the divorce, I had no intention of dating or marrying again for a while. A pain, but now I've adopted a more positive outlook and want to cherish the new happiness I found.